Hey everybody, what's going on? I'm DJ Sixsmith. You're watching Sit Down. It's the Republican senator from Iowa, Joni Ernst, is here with us. Brand new Simon Schuster book. Joni, how are you?
I am great. Thanks, DJ. I appreciate this a lot.
Of course, it's called The Daughter of the Heartland, my ode to the country that raised me. And Senator, you go through it all, the ups, the downs. What was it like reliving all this?
Well, I tell you, it just started many years ago when I was born in Southwest Iowa, lived and raised on a farm there. Great folks that taught me the value of hard work, and that truly no job is beneath me. Nothing is beneath me. Working with my hands and understanding the challenges that farming brought. Sometimes there were good years and sometimes there were really, really tough years that my parents had to, keep all of us kids together and make it through. But it really taught me a resiliency that lasted through my career in the military, as well as my civilian life, on through personal challenges that I had, and then taking me all the way to the United States Senate. So truly it is a story about recognizing we can overcome challenges and go on to do great things in our lifetimes.
Yeah, no question about it. And obviously a ton of different challenges in the world right now. Specifically for farmers in Iowa, you've lived that life from a mental health perspective, from an economic perspective. What are the farmers struggling the most with right now?
It is very challenging, and especially when you take some of the trade negotiations that have gone on for a number of years, which has interrupted some of the supply and demand that we see through our ag country. That has presented challenges, but then you take COVID-19 and you put it on top of those already existing challenges, it becomes very difficult. And while the federal government is providing aid to our farmers, that's not what our farmers want. They're used to being self-sufficient. They are the ones that will step in and help out a neighbor. They never want to ask for those things for themselves. And so our mantra across the Midwest is trade, not aid. And with COVID-19, it's just made it very difficult. And as you mentioned, mental health for our farmers, it does create a significant challenge where they're raised to be very stoic, keep that stiff upper lip. That's kind of how we do it in the Midwest. And it's hard to reach out and recognize when you are coming to a breaking point. And so I have worked on those challenges in the United States Senate, ensuring that we have resources necessary for our farmers to reach out and talk to someone, get those support systems that they might need if they are feeling down, if they are feeling depressed. I've always been very active in the veteran suicide space, but it was unbelievable when I started working with a number of my Democratic counterparts, figuring this out. We found out that farmers actually, by occupation, have the largest percentage of suicide rates. So, we made it our purpose to go back and support those farmers. And it is a very challenging time right now.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot going on. And, going back into your story, obviously people have great lives on the farm. And for you, that was something that early on, it was a part of your situation, but then you kind of wanted to do some more. So obviously you have a history of people in the military in your family, but when does that idea of service really come about? Because you're at Iowa State, you're trying to figure things out. When do you realize, like, you know what, I want a little something more besides life here on the farm?
Yeah, it was while I was at Iowa State, and I was blessed to be selected for an agricultural exchange. And this was in 1989. And that exchange took place in the Soviet Union.
That's crazy that you were able to do that at that point.
Unbelievable. So now in my young mind, the United States was a world superpower and still is. And then there was the Soviet Union, another immense world superpower. And so, in my young and inexperienced mind, I'm thinking that they must have the same types of opportunities for their citizens and, just comparing the two countries. But what I found when our group from Iowa arrived in the Soviet Union, we stayed on a collective farm in Ukraine, and it was very different. Now, I came from a very small family farm. We didn't have a whole lot growing up. But what we did have was indoor plumbing, we had tractors, we had a refrigerator, we had a telephone. And you know what? The folks I stayed with on that collective, they had none of those things. And so it was a stark contrast. And when we came together in the evenings to really talk about the exchange, and I'll remind you, it was an agricultural exchange. So we thought we would be talking about Iowa agriculture versus the way they farm in Ukraine. But that first night when we came together at the community center, the Ukrainians, all they wanted to know, and that first question was straight out, what's it like to be an American? And it was at that point that I understood fully the challenges that they had in the Soviet Union and the opportunities that I had in the United States. So I decided when I got back to Iowa State University for my fall semester, I just decided I can't take my life for granted anymore. I can't take my country for granted anymore. And the way I figured I could give back was by serving in the armed services.
And then the people from Ukraine got to come and experience Iowa as well, which is pretty cool.
And they did. And we hosted the young men and women that those of us had stayed with in Ukraine. They were able to complete the exchange that next summer. They came and they were just in awe at the abundance of resources and goods and opportunities that we had. And I just remember the young ladies that stayed on my family farm. I mean, we went in, it was a Kmart, a local Kmart in Red Oak, population 7,000. And we went into the store and the girls started crying because there were racks and racks of clothing. There were shoes available for purchase. There were cosmetics. There were radios. There were all kinds of things that they were not able to purchase in Ukraine. And so, of course, they're buying all these blue jeans. And the young lady I had stayed with, she had traced her brother's foot on a piece of paper and brought that piece of paper with her. And we were able to find a pair of tennis shoes that we thought would fit his feet. And she was just so thrilled to be able to take these things back with her to her family because they didn't have access to those things in the Soviet Union. So it was just a really great experience, and learning how other people live in other countries, what they have available to them and what they don't. But it just made me very proud to be in a country where we could determine our life story. It wasn't determined by our government. So again, just very proud. And that's the title of my story, my ode to the country that raised me. I'm just so thankful that I have those opportunities.
Well, speaking about learning about other people from around the world, let's talk about your service overseas, because one of the things I didn't realize is that 100,000 people from the Iowa National Guard go and serve overseas, and there you are in the middle of a war. And what was most surprising about that whole experience? Because you go into the sexism involved in the military, life driving around there. What just really blew your mind about everything going on?
Well, the thing that blew my mind, of course, initially was the fact that it was utter chaos trying to get into the country. And so we were really existing hour by hour, not knowing where we would end up as a unit, who would be our parent. We didn't even know who our parent unit would be. We were like lost children when we initially went into Kuwait. And the reason that is because initially the plans to go into Iraq were to go through Turkey. And then Turkey at the very last moment said, hey, United States, you cannot use our country to go into Iraq. And so every American unit, every other country's units were directed into this little tiny country known as Kuwait, which can only hold so many people and so much equipment at any given time. Getting equipment into the ports was extremely difficult. And so it was chaos. Eventually all of that settled down and we got settled into Kuwait and were able to run our missions up into Iraq. And mostly we did deliveries around Kuwait, but it was just a very challenging time being a company commander. I had phenomenal soldiers, though. I tell you what, they put their heart and soul into their work, whether they're driving a truck, whether they're ordering supplies, whether they're turning a wrench under a truck. All wonderful people. And they went through a lot of hardships, a lot of hard times.